Now we're going to take a look at how the quadratic formula can tell us something about the type of solutions that we have to a particular quadratic equation. So the key is that the place where we could have different types of solutions really depends on what is the value of this expression right here under the radical sign. So if we think about this, okay, and we think about what this b squared minus 4ac means for us, we can think of there are three possibilities for what b squared minus 4ac can be. Okay? The first possibility is that when we calculate this, we get a number that's greater than 0. Okay? Well, what does that tell us then about the type of solutions that we have? Well, for one thing, if I have a positive number under the radical, that means it's a real number. Okay? And the fact that I am both adding and subtracting that real positive number from negative b, okay, this says that I'm going to have two solutions. So if the value under the radical is positive, that means that my square root is real, okay, is a real number, and x has two real solutions. All right, so it can be greater than 0. Another possibility is that b squared minus 4ac is less than 0. If that's the case, then I have a negative number under my square root, which means I have an imaginary number, right? That means that if I've got the negative under the square root, that means I have to factor out the I, which means that now my square root is an imaginary number. Okay, but again, even though it's an imaginary number, I am taking negative b and I'm adding an imaginary number to that in the first case, and then I'm taking negative b and I'm subtracting an imaginary number in the second case, okay? So the square root is imaginary, but x has two complex solutions in this case. Well, the third possibility, right, either what's under the radical can be positive, it can be negative, or b squared minus 4ac is equal to 0. Okay? If this is the case, okay, well then the square root of 0 is just 0. So the square root is 0, and the other thing, realize negative b plus 0 and negative b minus 0, they're the same thing. In this case, x has only one solution, and it's a real solution. Okay. So as we can see, b squared minus 4ac can tell us an awful lot about what kind of solutions we have to our quadratic equation without ever actually calculating what they are. So when we take a look, we call b squared minus 4ac the discriminant of your, it's the discriminant of your quadratic, okay? And what it does is it tells you the number and the type of solutions that your quadratic equation has, okay? Now then, the key thing to keep in mind about this here, okay? Notice that the discriminant is b squared minus 4ac. The radical is not part of it, okay? So the radical is not part of it. So keep that in mind. You don't have to take the square root, because I don't need to take the square root to know what type of solutions I have when I'm calculating out the discriminant. So the discriminant is just the part under the radical, does not include the radical itself. Okay, and like I said, it tells you the number of solutions you have and the type of solutions that you have. So if you calculate b squared minus 4ac and it's greater than 0, you have two real numbers for solutions. If it's equal to 0, you have one real solution. And if it's less than 0, you have two imaginary solutions.